Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 31 of Hard Knock Hawks. I'm Anthony, along with Chris and Marco today. Leon cannot be here tonight because he's busy right now, but hopefully he can come back for the next episode. But today we're going to be talking a bit about the NBA playoffs currently, and Atlanta's future was a special guest today. Believe in Hawks' very own Brice Lewis. You can follow him on Brice underscore 2K on Twitter and his YouTube page, which is the same handle, which covers the Atlanta Hawks and other content like the Atlanta Falcons. So I want to ask you, Brice, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. I appreciate y'all letting me come on and talk some hoops with y'all today. Always good
So,
to catch up with
my
y'all.
bad.
Oh, you're good. You're good.
So I want to ask you this first, Brice, is from all the stuff we see in the playoffs so far, like what has generally been your expectation so far, and what has been surprising you for the most part?
Um, I guess all the comebacks we've been seeing. But at the same time, if you know the state of the game, it's not surprising. Um, I think this has probably been one of the better playoffs we've had in a couple of years. So I think that's also a big plus as well. But I think you basically see teams where you see their flaws, but you also see their strengths on full display. Obviously, they talk about playoffs matchups are very important. I think that's what you've also seen, like in the Pacer series with Cleveland. Even though Cleveland's been dominant, and I know a lot of people didn't believe in them as the season went on, and they have some key injuries as well. But Pacers, fast paced style, ball movement, low turnovers. They've been able to take advantage of Cleveland's mistakes and then been able to turn it into things. Plus, because the playoffs have been more physical than they've usually been. Well, they're usually physical, but it feels like the referees are definitely letting them play more this year. Um, you're seeing a lot of lower scoring games, which is another reason why a lot of teams are being able to come back. Because it's not like these games are like regular season games where teams like over 100 points in the third quarter. You're seeing a lot of games where teams are 70, 80 points in the third quarter. So even if you have like 65, 70 points, you're still right in it. And you just need one run, whether that's a string of threes, getting some stops, and boom, now you're in the lead. So overall, I think that's been the main gist of the playoffs so far. But we've also had some great matchups and a lot of close games, which I think is what you would want as a fan. And I'm sure the league has been excited about what they've been seeing as well.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the main things I've been interested in looking at these series is especially is the Celtics Knicks matchup, because the for both of those games so far, the Knicks have a 2-0 lead, but the one of the main reasons why they even have that lead is because the Celtics literally blew double digit leads twice. And I think especially with last year, the Celtics had this weird tendency to I feel like generally not necessarily playing up to their level that you think they could be for the team that for the caliber of team that they could be. I don't know if anyone agrees with me with this sometimes, right? But despite all that, their talent could still, carry them to the win. But this year, it seems like the Celtics are just not able to just pull it off in the end because either their terrible shooting has just cost them so many games, and players like Tatum just absolutely not being able to play well at all right now. What do you think, Marco?
I mean, the Celtics aren't the Celtics if they're not hitting threes. They very much live and die by the three. That's been their whole theme for the last, 4 or 5 seasons. You live and die by the three. And like today, they shot 10 for 40. Other night, they were like, what? I got it right here, actually. Other night, they were 15 for 60. So if their shots aren't falling from three, then it's easy to really get them to come back. And I'm not
And,
saying that Cat
and
is
that
the
was the most missed threes in any playoff game by the way
yeah.
ever. So
And I don't think Cat is a good rim detector, but he's clearly, deteriorating them from going to the rim because even from the regular field, they're not shooting that good either. It's like something isn't really going on. Then you have their star players who kind of aren't, they're getting kind of. I'm gonna say they are getting kind of clamped because so far, Jason Tatum's only like shooting 30% for the series, which he has done before. He's a known playoff, streaker. Jaylen Brown isn't really shooting his best either. Then you have guys like Derek White, who's not really contributing on offense too much now because again, shots just aren't falling. So that's just how the Celtics are going. If their threes aren't falling, they're very beatable.
What do you think about all these playoff shenanigans so far, Chris? Because I mean, it's very interesting, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's the most wonderful time of the year if you ask me. But yeah, to Bryce's point earlier, right? Matchups make these fights in the playoffs, and I think the Cavs are vulnerable to all the offense that the Pacers are throwing at them right now. Without Garland, they don't really have someone that can optimize their bigs as a playmaker. Jerome's having to scale up as a scorer. Garland was really kind of feasting in that spacing they have due to Mitchell. And Mitchell's right now, he gets to do everything, but there's no one to like kind of work the others. So they're just not able to win on the margins enough to keep up with that Pacers team that is essentially fully healthy, right? They got their stars, and Hallie's running the show. They're really pushing the pace and playing their game. This would have to be an offensive series for the Cavs, and I think if they were healthy, they would be able to pull it out, but they're not, so they're vulnerable. Siakam, that offense. And the Celtics, like to Marco's point, yeah, they live and die by the three. They don't have an offense really. It's weird. They do get by on talent. I think they put together a lot of talent, and they have a system that kind of just lets them look for matchups, right? But this is a team in the Knicks that they weren't great against the contenders in the season, but they do match up well with the Celtics team. They're sneakily small, right? They don't have a big guard. They have to play Brown at the three most of the time, and that kind of the Celtics do have, or the Knicks have OG and McCall and Josh Hart, which let them kind of match up physically with the Celtics on the perimeter. So they're not able to really get into any consistent post-up stuff or get to the rim too much. Cat doesn't really have anyone that's going to really pressure him from the Celtics side because Tatum's not big enough and KP is not that physical, but Cat's big enough to handle him, and I mean, Al Horford's really not going to stress him off the dribble too much. So, yeah, it's not a great matchup for the Celtics. If they manage games better, I think they would be able to handle this, right, when they get the lead, and then maybe they go to a different offense. But they just don't really have a different offense. They're just plan A over and over again. And they're good enough for it to work a lot of time, and they still might even win the series just because they're that talented. But, yeah, they don't have a plan B, and it shows when things start to get rocky. Tatum's not a player who can mentally kind of, like, figure it out, right? Like, Teague has that story about LeBron. Like they were like LeBron was winning and like they were walking like to halftime or something. LeBron was like, "Oh, it's good. Like I figured it out." And Teague was like, "What are you talking about?" And then they came out. LeBron just manipulating them, like pulling this guy into action because he knows you're going to help there, and now they're going to get this shot like over and over, and it's just stuff like that. And Tatum doesn't really have that to his game yet, and he can't like brute force his way to twos. So yeah, it's gonna be tough for them. They're gonna have to shoot it out. I think maybe get Tatum up ball, maybe let Drew or Derek you got to try to hunt Brunson, I guess. Yeah. Nuggets, I think, got lucky in game one.
Yeah, they 100% did. Yeah.
Yeah, the Thunder were kind of rusty, and they're blowing the doors off of them tonight. So that series could be, but because of that game one, that series could be interesting down the stretch.
Yeah.
Right? So they stole that game. So that one could be interesting. But yeah, it's just really interesting matchups. Probably the worst case matchups for the contenders in the East, which really does point to a lot of the people's point lately is that the East is wide open.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about that later.
Some teams stacking up. Yeah.
So I'm gonna start with you, Brice, with this next question. Generally, out of all the teams that are down so far, so that's the Celtics, the Cavs, well, OKC and Thunder are tied, so I'm not gonna include them, and the Warriors and Timberwolves are down. So in the East, so the Celtics or the Cavaliers, Which one do you think has the better chance of coming back from their deficit?
I'll probably go Celtics. Just because I mean they've had 20-point leads in both of these games, so it's not like where Cleveland first game, was close. Indiana pulled away. Second game, Mitchell, was kind of playing like, just like we're just gonna unload the clip, hope for the best, and they just didn't have enough at the end.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where, if the Celtics just can clean it up, make some shots, and not make mistakes, they can win. They can win in New York. I mean, I think it's like we mentioned that they live and die by the three. I think, and I'll even connect this to the Hawks a little bit. Like, I think the Hawks are 4-7, 4-3, 4-3 against the Celtics in the last 2 years. And if you think about all those wins, Hawks have beat Boston in 4 close games. Because the
Yeah.
thing is, Boston's going to take threes. They miss threes. Then you can run. You can get them out of set, and then you can create your own offense, and boom, now you have a lead. Um, and it's like you said with Cat, Boston really doesn't have an interior presence. That's always been their weakness. That's something else the Hawks have been able to take advantage of. They've been able to dominate in the paint because they need to in that type of situation. But I think the Celtics, if they, you need Tatum to play better first. You have
Yeah.
to get him to play better because I've seen Boston fans say they do not want Jaylen Brown first option hoops. So you need you need Tatum to be better. You need like Derek White hasn't had that game that sometimes could save him, because that's one thing about their lineup that's been so great is that Tatum and Brown didn't have to be great last year all the time.
Oh yeah, Derek White could just easily carry them, and
Exactly.
Drew Holiday, especially last year, was really good for them, and now he's just turning kind of. I don't want to say he's washed yet, but he's started to get there at that point, and it's probably going to be really concerning for them, especially now. So we'll see what happens for
Even
that.
Peyton Pritchard too. He has the capability of going crazy, and he hasn't.
Yeah. So, what do you think has the chance of being a potential? I mean, coming back from the deficit, Chris, and then we'll go to Marco.
Well, I mean, if Garland doesn't come back healthy, I think the Cavs could be cooked. I don't think they have the creation outside of Mitchell and the playmaking that Garland brought to really make up for what they're missing from him. It's crazy, like how a team that stacked is like so fragile. Just one player kind of changes the whole thing. And the Celtics, they're a lot more experienced. They've been in this before. I mean, not more experienced than the Knicks. The Knicks are sneakily experienced. That they have players that are like they've kind of been through these before. But I think they're just so talented. You kind of have to bet on them being able to come back. Between the two, it's going to be tough at this point, man. It's uphill battle. But if anybody can, it's probably the reigning champions. I think it's hard. As soon as I started to trust Boston, right, they come out and do this against New York. But I think Drew maybe can be a steadying presence if they like maybe lean on him a bit more once they get the lead and try to slow it down and figure something out. I think they just kind of have to start running more stuff and get their guys easier looks when things are kind of rough. I think that's a big issue for them. They just try to shoot their way out of it, and the playoffs, man, that's not easy. So we'll see how this goes. But yeah, I would say the Celtics probably the best chance. They just have so much talent.
What do you think, Marco?
I'm gonna have to say Celtics too, because again, they are the reigning champs, and the Celtics don't stay down forever. It was like a time in the regular season they went on like a 4-game losing streak, and then they spiraled back up. So they don't stay down forever. So if they can figure it out, or if Jason Tatum or somebody or Jaylen Brown can like truly somewhat lock back in, then they have a solid chance. I don't want to count the Cavs out yet, because I mean the way they lost the game, it's the way of losing a game in 45 seconds is not common for real. Like it's not.
It's really hard to do that.
It's hard.
Really hard to do that.
I can't really fault it, but the Pacers ended up figuring out how to like stop the Cavs from really scoring like that. And that was really just shut down D Mitch. Because like Ty Jerome was like 1 for 15. Their second best scorer was Max Strus, and he can't really create his own shot at like a decent level, but he can get there. But he's like,
Mhm.
it's not what he can get there. Blah blah blah. Then their third leading scorer was like Jared Allen. So it's like you don't have you know the they don't really have the personnel. But again, getting walked off by Tyrese Halliburton, it just the way it happened. So I think the Cavs have a chance. That's if they can get like Garland, Mobley. If they can get one of Garland or Mobley back and maybe Dre, then they have a better chance. But I feel like Celtics and Cavs actually have.
Oh wait! Imagine saying like a few months ago that they need Dre again. Like,
Yeah, man, we
that,
tried to warn them.
that's crazy.
That's our
Like,
favorite saying for past playoffs. We
like,
need Dre.
Man, it's crazy he gets hurt right then too.
yeah, that is.
We need Dre.
But I think I'm gonna say, I really don't want to be the contrarian in this situation, but the more I'm thinking about it,
Yeah.
don't unmute your mic. Don't say anything. Don't say anything, Chris. I am gonna say I think the Cavs have a better chance. Like you said, Marco. It's really hard to lose a game in 7 seconds. I think the only reason why they lost that game is because of some shenanigans at the end. I think they probably win that game if it really wasn't for some weird fouling shenanigans and Donovan Mitchell wasn't cooked. I would not be surprised if one of Mobley, Garland, or Hunter plays on the next game 3. I think I am probably way more confident in them just figuring out a way to actually win against the Pacers than I am at the Celtics because, like you said, Chris, um, Celtics don't really have a good plan in plan B, plan C, et cetera, like that. So if they have another bad shooting night, are they gonna figure something out again? And I don't think so. Especially with how Drew Holiday's performing, Derek White's performing lately, and especially Tatum, who's their main guy. I don't know what they're gonna do at this point. I mean, it's gonna be interesting to see. A part of me is just like, I think both of these guys are just cooked. I mean, both teams are cooked. They're probably not gonna be in the Eastern Conference Finals, which is crazy to think about literally months ago because they were the top 2 teams in the East. But this is the NBA. We're gonna actually just talk about this now. What do you guys think the Hawks are just missing compared to like the teams that made the playoffs? And how can we reach this level generally? I'll just start again with you, Brice, because I think Chris said it. I'm gonna say it again. I forgot what I was gonna say. Like, all we had to do was just make the top 6, and anything can happen, right? But for some reason, it's been a constant struggle, and I think it's just weird to see, like, what are the Hawks do you think are missing to be able to just raise up to that occasion?
I mean, I think it's like pretty simple. You're missing some defenders, some shot creators, and probably a little bit more size. I think those are the 3 biggest things that they're probably missing. Obviously, depending on what direction they go in, I mean, if Jalen can stay healthy, it'll help with a couple of those things. Because I like to go back to a bright time in Hawks history this past season when they were NBA Cup time, when the Hawks
Yep.
were playing some of their better basketball. If you looked at how the team was constructed at the time, you had big wings, guys were healthy. They were able to play games where they were winning 102, 106, 104, 108. As you can see, the playoffs, outside of a couple blowouts, it's very low scoring. You have to be able to play defense. You have to be able to, be better in the half court, which is also something the Hawks need to improve. Um, so for me, I look at, just improving those 3 things for the most part. And like I said, the East is wide open. So it's one of those things where, you know, you have kind of been a team the first 2 years. well, first year and a half of Snyder, and then the last half of this year, where you've kind of been an offensively. That's your strength of your team offense because you don't have the defensive people, and then obviously this season as well, you didn't have the size on top of that with injuries. So if they can get those three things right and get a remnants of what they were during that stretch around the NBA Cup time, I think that they have a good opportunity, and that's why they were able to beat Cleveland, Boston, New York early in the season because they had a much better roster construction that could compete with their rosters. And then they were able to play either the high scoring game or even a lower scoring game, where because that's basically when you get to the playoffs, everything slows down. So you can't rely on pace all the time, even though you want to still try to have that. But also at the same time, if you have to bunker down, get stops, and try to create off of that as well.
What do you think about this current predicament, Marco? Because I think, we were just so close so many times during these last few years, but we were just never able to really crack the top six.
The biggest things the Hawks are missing are size, shooting, and just having that real second option, so where you can take the pressure off of Trey. For size, we've been one of the smaller teams for the last 3-4 seasons, and then we finally got a bit bigger this year, just for at the deadline to get a bit smaller again because you needed something. You lost Jalen, you lost Clint, you lost Nance, so that's like three of your biggest guys right there. Then you bring in shorter guys like Niang, Levert, um, and man, because they're Levert isn't really a three, but we kept playing him at a three, which makes the lineup smaller. Then you kept running 3 guard lineups that make you smaller. You kept running stuff like that. That's just kind of, you know, getting you out of focus. With shooting, the Hawks also weren't hitting a lot of threes. I think a lot of games we could have won if you just hit a couple more of yours. Like that was a trending phrase for a lot of, like, Brad was saying it, Glenn would say it. They'll be like, if Hawks could hit a couple more shots, they would have won. Then
Yeah.
when teams know once other players are not hitting on our team, they're immediately going to beeline Trey and they're going to start pressing him full court, half court. Um, they're going to switch everything for Trey because they know if nobody else on this team is like somewhat hot, or if you don't have Jalen to like really pressure the rim and take some type of pressure off Trey, teams it immediately like identifies that and they're like, all right, we're just going to double Trey, we're just going to do this, and it gets to them because after a while, especially when you don't have a real second option, or you don't really have real bench scoring, so or you don't have anybody else that can run offense. That was also like our biggest thing. So once you take the team, a lot revolved around Trey again once Jalen got hurt, because it was you take Trey out the picture, and then when Trey comes in the game, they double team Trey, and now Trey is tired because Trey only sat for like 5 minutes, because once he got off the floor, that was it. Nobody could score at will. We didn't have any real offense, and it was stuff like that. So we didn't really have that. So a lot of these teams now that I'm seeing, Celtics, Pacers have like two good options after Tyrese, or if Tyrese is not hitting again, those options come up. Every team that's like right now, they have a legit second option and a decent third option to really get them over that hump.
What do you think, Chris?
The question is like specifically just what it takes to get into the top six. The Hawks have to improve their defense and finishing the shooting enough, right? If you can, they were scoring really well after the trade deadline when they brought in some shooters. They lost all their size, so they weren't able to defend as well as they were early in the season when they had their big wings. So they can find a balance just between that. I think they can get into that top six. It's like we said, the East is wide open. There's gonna be some teams that fall off a bit. A few teams that probably get a little bit better, but I think the Hawks should improve internal development wise, right? If they just kind of shore up the depth and hit those key areas, size, or the shooting and defense, they'll get more wins. And if we're talking about like getting in, like winning in a playoff series, making a playoff series, yeah, they don't really need a second option. That's like a bigger ask though, but like just the minimum, of getting into the top 6. Like you have Trey, you got Jalen and Dyson and O and Zach and these guys. Like they're talented enough in the regular season, right? When it's a little more wide open play, I think just getting reinforcements, you'll be a little bit better and you have a shot there. But if you're talking about like winning in the playoffs, yeah, you do need a bit more punch.
Yeah, because I am wondering what the Hawks are going to do as a second option, excuse me, because obviously we know, I think Trey has had his biggest load on offense I think he's had in a very long time. I think since at least 2021, obviously, because, we had no DeJounte, no really anyone else to actually do any of the offensive duties, especially with Jalen out. So it was just him just basically creating for everyone. And that obviously tanked his efficiency, which that criticized that got a lot of criticism for everyone. I do want to go over into this next question, and I'll just start with you, Marco. Is since as of right now we still have no clue about who we're gonna hire as the president, what do you expect, or what do you want for our next president for the Hawks to do generally to like just figure things out for the Hawks?
The next president of basketball operations they have to, well, first things first, you have to get Tony on some type of page that this team will not compete how you're operating. Like you can pass, the team has, in order to compete with what's going on right now, you have to be at least the first apron team. Because again, you can't let other teams pass you up, because you just let Detroit pass you up this season and this other team. So you can't let that happen again, because you never know, another team might come up from behind, sneaking again. Now you're making it hard on yourself. So I think he has to bring that understanding and, let Tony, focus on that. Second, you gotta really identify what you got on this roster. I think you have to, I've said this on Twitter, and I was like, the Hawks have more of a core 3 than a core 4. You can argue who that 4 is, but you can't argue who that 3 is. And I think that's where you have to really identify, what do you have? Who do I prioritize to keep? Blah, blah, blah. And again, you got to know how to operate, just the cap in general. That's what Onzi really wants, is really good at. That's what he's highly regarded at. So you just got to, make use of the assets you have, because this has been the most flexible we have been in like the last, since the 21 season. Like obviously this is the most flexible we have been, because we have money now. We have a lot of trade exceptions. We have some picks that we can move, blah, blah, blah. So you got the guy, whoever they bring in has to be experienced. You got to know something. You got to know how to deal with it. You got to be able to recognize the problems that are, the team has, and look at other teams like, okay, we need to add this, because like a lot of people use a small guard excuse, but the small guard worked for the Cavs because of the team they put around Garland and Mitchell. Those are 2 small guards for their positions, and again, the thing works. So I just want somebody that's experienced, can handle the workload, is not scared to put their foot down against Tony on a lot of moves, because again, you can't expect this team to be good without really assessing everything that's wrong. So
what do you think, Chris?
I think if what they're looking for from the president is, I think maybe kind of just quieting the room in general, someone to kind of set priorities and be one of the final voice, instead of Tony, who doesn't necessarily know the sport that well, or Nick, who isn't a basketball guy either, right? And I think Auntie's going to need some support, especially if he's trying to lock in and get the roster right. And you want a guy who can work with Auntie, right? And if the idea is good, right, can say yes. If it's bad, say no and why, and then sell it to Tony, right? You need someone that can pitch the vision and understands what they're trying to accomplish, and it can help organize, I think, the whole process of getting those guys right. The Hawks have to get a lot of transactions done this summer. They've not been making a lot of free agent moves or a lot of major trades. One deal here, a few like minimum signings there. They're trying to like do a few substantial things this summer, and I think they just feel like they probably need a veteran guy who's made a bunch of moves before, right, and can kind of help facilitate that. It's a lot for one or two people to really handle. That's why you have those president of basketball operations in a lot of places. And yeah, so I think, yeah, it's just maybe a calming voice or someone that can just really guide them through everything they're trying to do. Yeah, and just play off Onsi.
What you generally think about finding a new president for this team, Brice?
I gotta go to it's one of those things where you really just need a guy to come in who have a plan. You have a plan, you execute the plan, and you understand what you have. Because, like, everybody that they've interviewed will have a different opinion about this roster, will have a different opinion about the players, and you just have to see, okay, which plan is going to be most sufficient towards the success of what they want, which is like winning. They want to win some games. They want to, try to move up the rankings and try to compete. So really, just finding a guy who knows what he's doing, understands all the assets that they have, understand all the trade exceptions, the money, the minimums, things that they have, and then how can you use that to formulate this team. Obviously, you know, I don't know if a certain person's coming in here saying I'm taking a big swing for a star, or another guy is going to come in and say, "This is what I have. If we're going to build around the core and things of that nature." But just like pretty much being able to basically get Tony to understand, like, hey, this is what we got to do. This is the plan. This is how I think we could take the next step. This is where I've I've pointed out the deficiencies of the team, some strengths that we can continue to build on, and then just try to go from there. So, because like I said, I mean, this is a pretty big hire because you know you don't know what they see as the future of the team. So it's going to be very important to kind of, like I said, just make sure you just have a guy who knows what he's doing. Isn't coming in here kind of like we're just going to do it on the fly. Because I assume every interview you're having, you're like, all right, here's our roster. This is what we got. What's your plan?
Yeah, and the draft combine is this Sunday, May 11th. So I assume they probably would ideally want to get a president in here before they get the combine, so they have some idea of who they want to draft and stuff. So hopefully the Hawks have some idea of who they're picking before, I guess, Saturday at this point. But do want to ask you guys a bit about, do you have any idea of what candidates you guys like from like any of the rumored lists that you've seen so far, or do none of the candidates actually interest you at all? I know Elton Brand recently was declined the offer, but other than that, people like Danny Ferry, Monty McNair, other candidates, do any of the names interest you guys, or do you guys think it's just like a whole mad generally for the most part?
I'll go real quick. No, I don't really care. I'll be honest. As long as they get someone that sounds qualified. Honestly, one name that did interest me, I don't think many people would be interested in, is Stan Van Gundy. But I just know how detailed he is as a coach, and I think if you like isolate his role as like president of basketball operations, I mean, it depends on like how his vision for a team lines up with Onsi. But I think that would be an interesting guy, just because I think this team needs someone who's like really detail oriented, gets into the weeds, and I think that would be an interesting hire. But yeah, other than that, I don't really care now.
Okay, what do you say, Marco?
I'm kind of with Chris to a degree. There's a couple of names that I was like, And there's a couple of names I was like, wow, it would make sense. Like Danny Ferry, he has relations to us already, that whole situation and all that good jazz. But he did put together a good team, so he can clearly identify talent or whatever. You just couldn't stop LeBron. Um, I don't know I don't know if he can build a team in today's NBA, but for where that time was, that was a pretty good team. I think the assistant general manager for the T Wolves was on the list, but then he was like, if anybody was on my list, it would have been him. But I think he ended up signing a contract extension with the T Wolves, so that kind of brings him out. I know
Yeah.
people like a couple people like Bob Myers, but I think Bob Myers kind of got, that's a 50-50 slope on him because, like, yeah, he had a good team, but a lot of that was pure luck too. Like you can't you can't really project a lot of what happened with that team. So,
And to be fair, it's probably really easy to make a good team with Stephen Curry, Draymond, and Klay Thompson. So I
I
mean,
mean, yeah, and they he kind of inherited those two because like
yeah,
Golden State didn't want to give up on Curry because he had a lot of injuries in the beginning of his season, but they didn't want to give up on him. So then you got lucky with Clay again. You took Clay then again. So I think a lot of the stuff that like he just inherited. I think the biggest thing he did while he was there was the KD stuff and kept him going. But he also was a bad spender per se to where they kind of been there. But out of the names they've said so far, I kind of really don't like. None of the names really move me. So long as they get a guy that's experienced that can put a plan down, I'm fine.
you have any names that interest you, Brice?
To be honest, nobody crazily moves me. It's just one of those things where it's like, so I'm sometimes like I've seen people say it. I'm kind of like, honestly, I'm like, do we just let Salah run it? Like there's nobody that it's like, oh man, this is such a home run for us. Like everybody has negatives and positives. Like you bring in Booth, well, the head coach hated him, and you see Denver is a very top heavy team, but if they lose one more guy, they're cooked because they don't got nothing else
Yeah,
outside of that. You know, McNair, I mean, yeah, he was executive of the year back in 2023, 2022.
yeah,
He
and then
built
he
the
got
what
fired.
I think he it was the light the beam year. That was the year.
Yeah,
And we were like, "Oh, Kings are coming," and then they stopped coming. They went downhill.
yeah,
So, it's there's no like like Bob Myers inherited a dynasty. I mean, like I said, great point about Danny Ferry. Can he build a team in today's NBA with the new CBA, with the new restrictions? How that completely changes, how you do things. Like, there's no candidate that's available that's just like, yeah, this is a home run hire. I mean, even you've even seen it with head coaches. A lot of teams are just promoting guys. They're not hiring anybody new. Like there's just nobody out there that's moving people's needles. So I mean, it's just really about who they think really can. I guess they feel like makes the most sense because I guess at the end of the day it's Tony's decision. So I guess whoever moves him the most, because that's the person you got to sell on it. And I'm assuming Quinn and Kyle are in there too. But I mean, he's the one who makes the final decision.
yeah. I feel like I will not be surprised if they just hire Danny Ferry back, just because of his previous Hawks connections. But other than that, I would probably just prefer they just keep Auntie Sala and just make him the president and the GM, and that would just make it easier for everyone because, like everyone else, I'm just not really moved by the current list. It's just not really that inspiring at all. So, but we'll see what happens in the next few days because, like I said, draft combine is literally this weekend. So,
Yep, start Sunday. I do want to point out, I think the reason why they're getting like in the past season, we haven't had a president of basketball operations since Travis. So I think the reason they're
basically,
doing it now is because I don't think Auntie wants all the work. Like, yeah, Kyle is still there, but now we use Kyle more as a draft scouting
yeah,
guy
just
and
scouting
all that
guy,
stuff. So
player
like he's
development.
there, but yeah, he's. I don't think Auntie wants all of the grunt work because he knows his team is going to take some time. So you kind of want some like Auntie's respected, but you want somebody else that's like respected as well, where you can get some of these deals over the hump.
Imagine if we make Kyle Korver the GM. I'm not GM, but president or something.
I wouldn't be surprised. It's
Like,
very on brand for us.
yeah, I don't know, but we'll see. But our last little topic for today is our dream off season. So I'm gonna start off with you, Marco, and what is gonna be your general dream off season for the most part?
Um, the Hawks get serious. You can't run it back. I will say that on stream. I think nobody in that building is on the operation of running it back because the Landry fire kind of points to that too. Because Landry might have wanted a more slow approach. He probably wanted one more season in the kettle, and then you finally pop out. I'm like, nah, you can't do that. You took a down year. You got traded by him the down year. You develop the guys that you need to have. You see what you have. You can't run it back. So for my dream all season, you got to get a second person. Like we've all hoped that Jalen is, the second star, whatever. But Jalen missing like real time this season to really, develop or whatever, it's kind of putting you back. But we know that Jalen is a solid third option. Jalen probably still will get 20 as a third option with whoever you bring. Whoever that second option is, you have to make sure it fits. You can't run, you can't do another DJ situation. But you got to get a third option and you have to get some more depth in. I like the guys. And like on paper, I like the guys we brought in, but they didn't really fit what we need as a team. So you need another backup center because Clint is most likely gone. Because even Brad said it on his pod episode earlier. He said he's like pretty sure that Clint is walking, which I'm pretty fine with. He's ran his time in Atlanta. That's okay. We don't need you anymore. You got to get bigger on the bench. You got to get somebody, some offense off the bench too. Make some decisions on some guys, like Kobe. Do you want to wait or do you want to do another year of Kobe or do you just want to, just go ahead and move it and just count that as another loss? And like again, my whole thing, you got to bring in like a real second option. That's the only way you're going to go in. I don't expect Trey to sign an extension until you bring him some real help. I expect all that to go just like that. So that's what I would want to happen. Just give me a second option and some depth, and I think we have a very good chance of being top. We can win a lot of games. I don't want to put a seed on it, but I think Hawks are on pace to win 45 games with Jalen alone. So if you get another person that can work with them, you're fine.
All right. What is your dream off season, Brice?
Um, I mean, really bad. Just fix all the issues we have, man. Like, just kind of doing like that. Like, because I hadn't thought about it too much, like from a star scenario, but like, let's just say we ran it back with our starting five. I said from a bench scenario, dream wise, like dream for me would be you get Jones, you were able to get Malik Beasley, and you're able to get. And I just said this too because I feel like he would help with size. Steven Adams as well, which he'd be a cheap player to get as well.
Perfect.
And then I also even said re-sign Karis LeVert. So now you got Vert can create. Beasley's one of the best shooters. Jones can shoot. You've improved shooting. You've improved defense, and you have a big. I would still keep the 13th pick, and then you can now use that for either what you could even draft another center who could shoot. Um, you could I with Jalen, I maybe or you can do a four, just depending on what you want to do there. Uh, I mean, you got Gay. I mean, now you pretty much now your front line is after a Kongwu and Jalen. You have 7-footers and rim protectors and et cetera, et cetera. And then you just kind of go with that because I mean I would assume Dyson's going to come back with a better offensive game next year. We'll see. I think Zach's kind of the big question mark. I would say, is he going to be more of what we saw this year? Are we going to see more of the positive side? Obviously, if Jalen stays healthy, and then I know Okongwu was a very controversial conversation in the community, but I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, if we give Okongwu some help and stop running Terrence Mann at the four, I think we'll be fine. So, from that perspective, and also this also helps cut down on if you telling me George Niang's my third fourth power forward, Man's my third or second small forward, I'm fine with that. I'd rather them in that role than oh yeah, we need 25, 30 minutes of those guys because that's who we have to rely on. So that would probably be my thing because I also think that will help with roster construction as well. And now you have depth across the board, so now it's like Hawks are going to be able to handle injuries better.
All right. What's your dream off season, Chris?
It's probably a Zion off season. Go get a real on ball scoring talent that can balance the floor and make people play straight up. Uh, get Trey some help there in terms of scoring. And then you had some shooting on the bench, some defense. And if you get Zion, I would be open to bringing back Levert. I think you don't have to go too crazy with I think Dyson and Levert routing out your like main four ball handlers. Um, you still have like beat when you need them. But yeah, I think doing that, and if you can do that and just keep Jalen, Dyson, Trey, I'm happy. Anything more is a win. But yeah, I think this team is at a place where like they really need to add that guy. I think they have the picks to do it. I think if you can do that after the draft, right, you still would have a couple rookie contracts coming in to improve that depth. And I think you would have a strong core to like really push forward um, over the next couple years, make some noise. I think if you get Trey Young into the tournament with a competitive team that can force teams to really play him straight up, man, I think he can really make some fireworks. So yeah, it'd be Zion and shooting.
Yeah, I'm basically on the Zion train too. My dream off season would probably involve trade for Zion or just in general getting a second option. Also, paying the tax, paying the luxury tax finally in this Trey era. That's basically a requirement for me. I will get a backup center because Onyeka would be my starting center. I don't care what anyone would say about he's. I feel like he's probably earned the right to start for this season. I don't know if I would draft a backup center, but I would probably just get a backup like Luke Cornett or Steven Adams. But then you get a backup power forward like Aldama or someone else like that, and then you just figure out the rest of the roster from there, basically. And I don't know about re-signing Karis LeVert, but if he's willing to resign here for like a cheap contract or the MLE, I'm just fine with that generally. But I think I think my main priority, if I was like the GM, I would just try to find a second option to just help elevate this team because I want to try put the Hawks into top 6 or top 4 conversations at this point in the East. But I think that's gonna be it for today. Anyone have any final thoughts before we close this out?
Yeah, I think a lot of people. Again, as you can see my name, I don't think the Hawks can afford to run it back. If you hit that running back button, you can kiss Trey goodbye. I'm sorry. I don't want to say it. I don't want to even dream it, whatever. But if you really run that, if you really run back what you had, you're not serious this year, and
Well,
that's just
I'll say it's a gamble. On top of that, it's you're you're real close to Trey leaving.
yeah.
You gotta
Like
be right if you run it back. You
You know
gotta
what?
be right.
Since we're talking about this for a second, Brice, what do you think in the scenario that we do run it back, possibly with just everyone here and Jalen's basically healthy for the most part?
Um, I mean, there's no like guarantee for anything. You run it back, it's risky. If you trade for a star, it could be risky because it depends on the deal that you have to give up.
Yeah,
As you can see in today's league, I always say one of my concerns would be depending on what you give up. Is depth. I think you can become top heavy. You win in the regular season, and then you get into the pro season, and then if we get beat in the first round, we're gonna be like, how did we lose in the first round with two top players? And it's like, well, what's the rest of the team look like?
yeah,
So, I mean, it really just either move you make, whether that's go get a star or run it back, you just have to make the right moves around that to make it happen. That's kind of how I view it. from that perspective. Like there's like, because I feel like running it back, you run it back because you're thinking as the front office, this will give us more stability over the next few years, which it will. It will be more stable if you can hit it and you can get it right. Where if you make for the big star, you're accepting, yeah, we got 2, 3, 4 years. Because usually that's usually how it goes, unless you're able to continuously make moves to can continue to extend that window. Um, which I mean, so I mean, then you obviously have to just figure that out on a year-to-year basis. Okay, what is that? How do we continue to keep the window open? Things like that, because you could see windows can close very quickly, and like I said, when you win, sometimes you just gotta get lucky too. They always say when
Yeah.
you win a championship, you get lucky. Like like we like Bucks. What's the one thing that Giannis struggles with? Free throws. That man hit free throws the year they won a championship. He ain't done it since, and he's also been hurt. Like it's just you need certain things to go your way. So that's kind of where I kind of stand from either or is like either way you got to have a plan on top of that. If you run it back, okay, how are you going to build out this team to where you're obviously expecting growth from your young players, but you also have the rest of the talent, because you saw like with Detroit, they added key veterans with their young players and that elevated them. So is that a situation where the Hawks have to do the same thing? Or if you run it back with a star, okay, you're gonna have to give up some of the core. One of my concerns is, do the Hawks have enough assets to do that? In terms of, if you give up more assets, you don't really have much left. So you better hit on who you sign,
Yeah.
because it's not like you got other things you can go to. So that's kind of how I view it from both ends.
Yeah, I mean it's really interesting because on one hand you see like teams like the Pacers, they have like the Pacers have so much depth, and that was just able to just basically carry them against teams like the Cavaliers. On the other hand, the Knicks, they're very
But
top heavy, but go ahead, Marco.
but with the Pacers, they still identified that they needed to bring in a second
See,
option
that's true. That's true. You're right.
with
You're
the
right.
young talent. With the young talent
You're
they
right.
have, because I question about Mather and what they can do with him this offseason, but that's a different topic. But they still identified they needed to bring in a second person to help get that team over the hump, and they brought in Siakam. I think Detroit will do something similar because like they weren't bad in the game against the Knicks. Like I'm pretty sure they had like one more real piece, like somebody that was not Cade. And really, realistically, you don't want Beasley to be your second scorer, like a leading
Yeah.
scorer. That's a thing to say, but you don't want him to be you want him to be more like a third scorer. So I feel like Detroit will probably explore some options to bring some guys in. They probably won't overspend, but if they have a chance to bring in a guy that's going to help them stay in that top six, they're going to do it. That's why I'm saying with the Hawks, you can't run it really necessarily full on run it back. Like, yeah, let's say you want to keep the young core. Now, who you still, if you keep the core four like that, and that's Trey, Dyson, Jalen, Zach, you keep them together, you still need to bring in another starting guy that can get them over the hump. You can't just say, okay, we have enough of this and we're just going to make cost
I mean,
saving
I am
moves.
assuming if you basically run back, you're expecting one of them to just make another jump again.
And
I
that's
mean, it
too
has.
risky. At this
I mean,
point
that's
of where
true.
we're at, that's too risky. You can't just project the jump. You can't just be like, okay, Risa did that. I project him to do more. Like, no, because Risa for the first half of the season was not that guy the second half of the season. So you can't just run that back. I feel you can't let another team pass you up, because Orlando, they were very hurt this year. They were very this and that the third. I'm pretty sure they bring in a point guard. That's another team that's like a back ahead of us. You have to like look at stuff like that in situations where you can't put yourself in a hole.
I mean, you're right. I mean, I agree with you basically, but I think I'm just gonna be very interested to see what the Hawks actually do, because a part of me really wants them to just get a star like Zion and just go for it all, just put all the chips in. But I don't know if they're going to be willing to do that, because yes, they have the assets to do that, but I think they may feel like it's too much of a risk.
Zion is fairly cheap, I feel, just because of his
Yeah.
injury history
Uh-huh.
and the beef he has with New Orleans. They probably just want to move on, kill that relationship.
Especially if they get someone like Cooper Flag.
I am personally not a fan of Zion if I have to give up Jalen. I'm sorry. I know you said it on Twitter. I know you brought it around, but if I have to give up now, of course, you can say like, how will this work? Whatever, blah blah blah. But you're going to need Jalen when Zion sits out those 20 games or whatever. You're going to need that third option on that in that line. So I'm not in the market of giving
What
up
if he
Jalen.
doesn't sit out 20 games though?
You can guarantee he'll sit out at least 20 games, man.
I mean he played
The
70
thing-
games last year.
The thing for me is even if you lose Jalen, man, you're losing your rebounding, man. That's an elite rebounder. I think he's a big part of the
especially if you want to keep Onyeka as a starting five. Like, no shit on Onyeka.
Yeah, elite roller. I mean, he just does so much. That's one of your playmakers.
I mean, Dyson, I'm not gonna argue about this today, but I think
that's another topic.
Yeah, that's another topic for later. We'll talk about that later, but I feel like that kind of trade could theoretically work. I'll say that. But we'll save that one for later. But Brice, if you want to tell us where we can find you again, I said it before in the intro. You could say it again.
Yeah, y'all can catch me on X, Twitter, Brice_2K. Believe in Hawks is the podcast that I host for the Believe Podcast Network, BLEAV. And Hawks, if you want to catch up with all my latest takes covering of the team, I'm going to have part 2 of my conversation with Caleb Johnson from 92.9 coming out tomorrow evening. Also, do some Falcons content. Just did a video about Michael Penix going into year 2, so we were in that realm. And yeah, just trying to continue to grind, get out content, and like I said, I appreciate you guys letting me come on and talk hoops with y'all, and look forward to. I'm sure I'll be in the spaces as we continue to have them throughout the summer, through every move, draft, and everything that happens. So,
all right, thank you so much, Brice, for coming in here. And as usual, thank you all so much for listening in. We almost got into a big argument about Zion for Jalen and if it was good or bad, but that's okay. We'll save it for another podcast. But we will see you all next time here on Hard Knock Hawks. Have a good one, everyone.